Hello and welcome to this video on liberalism's views on society and the economy, all part of and linked into the AQA Government Politics course and linked specifically to the ideologies section. So, liberalism's view of society is influenced and stems from its optimistic view of human nature. Remember, if you've seen the previous video on human nature, we looked at and explored the fact that liberals have a much more positive view than people did in the medieval period, part of that process of challenging ideas that happened as part of the Enlightenment, okay? And this positive view of society is it's massively different from the pre-existing views that society had. Now, the number one example that is used as that different view is the view of a man called Thomas Hobbes. When he wrote a book called Leviathan, he argued that human nature is brutal and selfish. Okay, human nature is not positive. Humans are not rational. They're brutal and they're selfish. And that a society is only able to exist if human nature is restrained by a strong state. So, in order for you to have a nice, functioning society, you have to have a strong, authoritarian state. And he went on to declare, rather famously, that without a strong authoritarian state, that life is nasty, brutish, and short. And so basically, if you don't have a strong authoritarian state, people spend their lives dealing with stuff violently, and they have a mentality of get the other guy before he gets you. Without laws or anything else, it's simply just going to be dog eats dog, survival of the fittest. That is the very negative view that people had before liberalism came onto the scene. Now, John Locke, who we've looked at previously, views society very differently to Hobbes. Interestingly, Hobbes is writing slightly earlier than Locke. Hobbes lives through and experiences the English Civil War and sees the breakdown in society that occurs there. John Locke is living and writing slightly afterwards, but Locke does view society very differently. He argues that a natural society with natural laws exists along a set of natural rights. Okay, that's without a state. There does not have to be a state to secure these things. So a natural society always exists. Now, what these natural rights are, what these include, is the right to life, liberty, property, and happiness. Okay, people have those regardless of any state, okay, before the creation of a formal state. Now, because liberals, inspired by Locke, believe in these natural laws and these natural rights, they believe this makes it possible for a civilized society to exist without a strong centralized authority. So in essence, even without that strong authoritarian state that Hobbes thinks you need, you can have a decent quality of life. Life will not be nasty, brutish and short because of these natural elements. And because of these natural laws and these natural rights, this has led to the belief in the existence of a natural state, and it means that liberals focus on the individual, and they think that is the most important aspect of society. So people like Locke and liberals believe the individual is more important, whereas Hobbes believed that strong authoritarian state is the most important aspect of society. Now, John Stuart Mill goes a little bit further. He argues that the most important role of any society is to support and facilitate individualism. And that rather than necessarily being authoritarian and strong, has to facilitate this individualism. Now, liberals believe that each individual has a unique personality and a set of particular talents. That every person has got something they can bring to the table. Now, in addition to this, linking to that really positive view of human nature, liberals believe that individuals are rational when pursuing their own self-interests. So again, it's not going to be nasty, brutish and short, as Hobbes believes, because people will self-regulate. People are rational. People won't use violence. They'll use that reasoned discussion that liberals think will happen. Now, individuals are egotistical, which means they are primarily driven by a desire to fulfill their own potential to be self-reliant and independent. And we've seen an example of this in egotistical liberalism and human nature. Now, again, this is an idea put forward by Mill and formed by Mill, and he's basically arguing that within society, that sort of self-interest that they're looking for, that self-interest they're going to pursue, is to be self-reliant and independent, not to be reliant on a state, not to be reliant on a government to look after you, but that individuals want to exist independently within society. Now, sort of carrying on with this focus on the individual, liberals believe that a society must focus on individual freedom, that this is the most important aspect of this. And ultimately, liberals would see any society that doesn't focus on individual freedom as being completely dysfunctional. Because for them, that is the most important aspect. Now, the right to property seems being particularly important. Remember, that's one of those natural rights that Locke believes in. And basically, they see this as being really important because it's the main way to see how an individual has contributed to society. So what they own, what they have built, is the main way of seeing what they've done, in effect. And John Locke defines property as being that with which man has mixed his labour. Now, clearly in today's world, it's very different to how Locke's world existed. So people were clearly more hands-on, people would build their own settlements, etc., etc. We don't do that today, but that could still be interpreted as what you buy with your wages, in effect. So that with which man has mixed his labour. You go to work, you earn your wages, and then you spend that appropriately. So buying a house, investing in a business, these are all things that Locke would define as property today, and that liberals would see as being how you have contributed to society. Now, that idea of property is taken a bit further by later liberals like Mill. And he sees this as a medium through which an individual can develop their potential. So by owning property, by having property, they think individuals can build and fulfill their potential because of the assets that they have. And that's why that right to property is seen as being really important in society. Because remember, all individuals are seen as having a particular set of skills that they can bring to the table, and by having property they can develop that and be a positive force in society. Now, this brings us on nicely to liberalism and the economy, because the view that liberals take towards the economy is shaped by its views regarding private property. And property is, remember, it's a natural right. It's seen as being essential in liberalism, as a key part of individualism. Okay, it's a natural right. And this leads liberals to support an economy that puts private property at its centre. Any economy in a liberal state will, generally speaking, view private property as being incredibly important. Now, a well-known economist, Adam Smith, in The Wealth of Nations in 1776, he began the link between liberalism and private enterprise and private ownership of the economy. So the private sector that we have today, the idea that the government shouldn't own all of the key aspects of the economy. Okay, the government shouldn't own the supermarkets. The government shouldn't own big business. Okay, it should be owned by private individuals, all of whom invest and make money from it. Now, what this does is give them a clear difference between liberalism and socialism. Okay, economic liberalism is known today as capitalism, whereas socialism is the complete polar opposite. Liberals fight for and defend a market-based economy. They believe, remember, in that private sector that markets should regulate. Whereas socialists, they focus on anti-capitalist measures like fundamentalist socialism, the idea, that sort of desire for common ownership, the belief the state should own things, wealth should be distributed, there shouldn't be a private sector as such, and that things, in their mind, everyone should earn the same. Things should be, they would say, a lot fairer. Liberals would say that that goes against fairness, but it's a key difference between the two. Liberalism's support of capitalism comes from the individualistic qualities that both of them hold. Both liberalism and capitalism are driven by the role of the individual and by people being able to be individuals. Another reason why liberals support capitalism is because of their positive view of human nature. Remember, they see people as being rational, they see people as being reasonable, and they see people as being self-aware of how they impact on other people, and therefore are willing to resolve issues via dialogue. This means that they don't think capitalism can become self-destructive because people are reasonable. Now, Adam Smith believed that if any obstacles to free trade could be removed, so if people could trade freely, if there were a lack of taxes or tariffs, that it would enable individual traders to reach success by being guided by market forces. So in essence, you make money based on supply and demand, for example. Now, what Adam Smith believed is that after leaving these people alone, by not regulating them, by allowing them to invest and make money from their businesses, and by investing in the markets, he believed that the wealth that was generated by this small group of individuals could then trickle down to everyone. So this is the beginning of what some people label as trickle-down economics, the idea that if you allow a small section of society to become incredibly rich and wealthy, the money they've made will trickle down, either directly via employment, so by people working in the factories or the businesses owned by these people, or by those people spending their money in shops, in restaurants, in buying extra property. But that the money that is made by individuals will be spent elsewhere in the economy. Now, liberals see this as being reflective of their positive view of human nature. Okay, rational, reasonable. Okay, remember, life is not nasty, brutish and short. Life is positive. Now, critics of liberalism's view of the economy argue this is a really naive view. And it's a really naive view of the free market's willingness to spread wealth. Its critics basically say, if people have got loads of money, then yes, there will be a certain amount of it that is reinvested. However, people aren't going to get their paycheck, if they're a millionaire, and spend every penny of it every single month. There's going to be a certain amount of it that is hoarded. And therefore, the free market is not always willing to spread its wealth. Now, finally, we just need to look at economic liberalism really quickly. Remember, economic liberalism is what is referred to now as capitalism. And it emerges as an economic system in the late 17th century. And it contains three factors. It involves private property. Remember, private property is a natural right for early liberals, linked to the ideas of John Locke. It is individualistic. It involves individuals cooperating and competing. Remember, liberals support this because of their positive view of human nature. Because we are reasonable, because we are rational, that competition won't lead capitalism to become self-destructive. And also, it is believed to be of benefit to all. So, for example, the trickle-down economics we just explored. But also, the reason that liberals believe that capitalism will be of benefit to all is because they are optimistic and because they believe in progress. They believe that individuals generate progress, that individuals can shape their own destiny and are able, in effect, to help everybody else along the way.